Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the debut record from Heriot, Devoured by the Mouth of Hell, out September 27th on Century Media Records. The album has 10 tracks, 34 minutes in length, and they are a British metalcore band. And the only reason I'm saying that is because that's what they're listed as far as their genre or their sound is concerned, on all of the platforms that I looked at. But when you press play on this record, you're not going to hear a metalcore band. You're going to hear a death metal band, a deathcore band, but definitely not a metalcore band. It's a lot heavier than I was expecting coming in. Now, as far as the album design, the album structure is concerned, I gotta say this is a very compact album. I was expecting it to be that way. 10 songs, 34 minutes. It kind of leads into that more compact experience, but it's not as dense as I thought it would be, considering how heavy the album is, considering the duration of the record, and considering how many songs the album offers. I was expecting this to be a very dense sounding album, perhaps even hard to digest at times, overwhelming the senses and overwhelming the listener. It's not the case. It's still a very heavy sounding record, but it doesn't have that consistent density from beginning to end, and that's a great quality for an album like this. Songs like Opaline or Visage are songs that break away, even Solvent Gaze, these are songs that break away from that overall heaviness and perhaps even density to make the album more palpable, to give the record more ebbs and flows, to make the album feel a lot more dynamic and not just create a very thick slab of meat from start to finish that at the end of the experience would become very hard to tell the forest from the trees. So great design, enhancing the individual qualities of the songs. Now, once you get into the sound, I mentioned this already, don't come in expecting your prototypical metalcore record, because it's not. It's a lot heavier. It's more of a death metal, deathcore sounding album with some atmospheric, I'm going to call them atmospheric elements in some of the songs that I mentioned before that break away from the heaviness, that give the listener a few pauses here and there, a few moments of relief, so that you're not bombarded, your senses are not being bombarded with this consistent brutality that the record has, both from a sound perspective and even from a vocal standpoint. Because both of those elements on this album work really well together to always offer this consistency of aggression, consistency of intensity, and making the songs feel and sound a lot heavier, giving them a lot more power, a lot more strength. Within the sound elements of the record, I want to outline bass, guitars, and drums because I felt like all three had positives, and some of them could have even given more positives to the overall outlook of this record. One of the elements that surprised me tremendously was the bass. Once again, for a record with this sound, with this idea, with this sort of experience, normally the bass is almost forgotten, or at least it doesn't have as much of a predominant role or as much of a consistent role sound-wise from beginning to end. On this record, you're going to hear the bass quite a bit. It plays an important role in the overall soundscape of this record. At times, it felt like the bass sound and the mix for the bass sound was heavily influenced by Fear Factory. I got that vibe, I got that essence of how they use the bass, the sound of the bass, the impact that it had, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. It gave a sense of clarity at times, but it also added a little bit of darkness to some of these songs, and how it had infiltrated the overall mood of the track, having a very defining, becoming a very defining element in that mood. So the bass sound was a huge surprise for me, and I enjoyed it tremendously. The drums pack a punch, and because when you look at the heaviness of the record, you'll obviously have to look at the heaviness of the drums and the heaviness of the guitar. So the drums do pack a punch. My issue with the drum sound on this album, it feels very one-directional. I was expecting to hear a little bit more movement from the drums in the mix. You can create lateral movement with the drum sound, taking nothing away from the heaviness of the tracks or from the power and heaviness of the drums, but allowing the drums to have a little bit more lateral movement, make them a little bit richer. It gives more energy to the record, and it makes the sound bounce more, it makes the sound move more, which creates more fluidity, which makes the songs a lot more engaging. The way the drums are represented on this record, they always feel like they are in the same place at the same time with the same output. Not that the output is not good, but that static presence, to me, it takes away from creating a more energetic sounding record to match that energy with the overall heaviness that the album already has. Once you get into the guitars, I enjoy the guitar sound on this record. I think it's a core element, if not the core element, of the soundscape on the album, and it's an element that, you know, becomes the final piece to the overall puzzle. I enjoy the approach, and I enjoy the approach in elements that I wasn't expecting it to see. Once again, for the style and sound of the band, the way the record is put together, I was not expecting songs to start with a solo, like really rocking the whammy bar, for example, or tracks have really old school death metal style solos. So there's a lot of richness to what the guitars offer on this record. They're not coming in and just providing the chugginess and the heaviness that you would expect from this album and from this band. They rather come in and influence the sound with elements that are a little bit detached of where this current sound and bands that fall under this current umbrella are doing. So there was a lot of throwback death metal elements on this album, and that makes the record, from a guitar standpoint, have a lot more to give. Now, once it comes into the vocals, you have two vocalists. I mean, you have a main vocalist and you have a secondary vocalist. So you're having these two different sets of vocals and having completely different vocal approaches and vocal deliveries. One a little bit more lower, a little bit more stretched out. The other one a little bit deeper, coming in a little bit deeper, even lower. So that you get a little bit more emphasis, you get a little bit more volume, you get a little bit more thickness. So you have this contrast of a more stretched out, deep, sometimes moving into a little bit higher, almost screaming delivery, and then you have the real cavernous style approach. So these are very, very distinct styles, very distinct approaches that work really well because they create movement within the vocals. You're not having just a one size fits all approach. You don't have just one style delivery. Even coming in with clean vocals on this record, with really somber clean vocals on this record, adding to the overall ambiance, adding to the overall atmosphere that some of the tracks have, which was something else that surprised me tremendously about this record. So I honestly felt like the vocal style and the dual vocal approach adds great quality to this record. It adds energy to the album. It makes the vocals move really well, and it always keeps the listener on its toes. You never really know exactly which style or which approach is coming around the corner. So when I look at this album, and when I look at this being a debut record, the album surprised me by being a little bit more mature than I was expecting it to be. They understood a lot of their shortcomings, or the shortcomings of the genre that they're in, and they try to minimize those to the best of their ability, and in a lot of cases they were able to do so, making this a very engaging sounding record, a record that has a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of different approaches, a lot of different deliveries, a lot of different elements that are not necessarily prototypical to this sound or to a band like this. So thinking outside the box and executing that well really makes this a really interesting and a really well-crafted debut record, which is not always the case with debut albums. They're not always this well put together, but this one really feels, outside of a few elements here and there, for a debut album, it really knocks it out of the park. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Harm Sequence. I mean, this is a great track. It's fast, it's heavy, it's a demolishing track. The vocals add incredible aggression. You have the two sets of vocals on this track, but you get predominantly those more screeching, those more stretched out, higher end vocals, with some deeper ones pushing into those highers. And then you have the backing vocals coming in twice within the track to add some depth to the delivery, and allowing this to become really an old school death metal song more so than anything else. I mean, when you look at the length, it has almost more of a grindcore style length, because it has a punk feel in terms of how the song is designed, or even a hardcore feel in terms of how the song is designed. But when you listen to the track, it feels more like a prototypical death metal song, and you see that a lot in the solo of the track. It has a great solo that adds massive flair to how this song comes about. It has a killer riff. It's a great song. The guitars sound massive, and so do the drums. Next, we have Sentence to the Blade. Killer drums on this track, I must say. For someone who is complaining about the drums not having a lot of lateral movement, for a song like this, you don't need that lateral movement. You just need heaviness, power, and depth, and the drums definitely offer that on this song, creating a lot of heaviness, making the song sound a lot more potent, and opening with an old school whammy bar approach really adds an old school death metal flair to this song, and it fits perfectly in the overall heaviness of the track as well. The song then gains momentum. You have the two sets of vocals on this track that really help break through the overall energy that the song has, the overall heaviness that the song has, and also add to that same heaviness, but it makes the song feel a lot more dynamic. I enjoy the guitar sound throughout. It has a really great punch as well, and then the drums help emphasize the heaviness that's already there from the vocals and from the guitars. Last but not least, Solvent Gaze. The bass on this song is excellent. I really like the bass sound. I really like that this is a more atmospheric song. The way it starts and the way it finishes, it kind of goes full circle with a very hazy sound experience where the bass populates that sound experience and allows itself to kind of dominate what you're hearing and what's coming through. Then you have the vocals. Even the vocals come a little bit more at the distance, so everything about this song feels far away. The sound feels far away, the vocals feel far away. It's a really interesting song because it creates a very different dynamic. There's no other track like it on the record. It has a lot of individual prototypes that makes this song stand out. And then speaking of standing out, in the midway through the song, the track completely explodes. It becomes a lot meatier, a lot heavier, a lot more powerful, both musically and vocally. And then it comes back to that more atmospheric piece, and like I said earlier, it goes full circle. So it's a very interesting, different sounding song that at times in that haze, it almost feels psychedelic. This is it, Heriot with Devoured by the Mouth of Hell, out September 27th on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.